Most of the falafel that people make at home sucks. It's dry, it's bland, it's crumbly, and it's not even close to what you would get at a Middle Eastern restaurant or from a street cart. So to help you guys avoid falafel disaster, that's not what you're looking for. In this video, I'm gonna show you my well-tested recipe for what I think is truly great falafel. It's shatteringly crisp on the outside, super tender and fluffy on the inside, and the whole thing is packed with fresh herbs and spices, so it's flavorful as hell. It's so green. To get started, I'll pour 225 grams of dried chickpeas into a high-sided container. Then I'll add in about 1,000 grams of water, or 1 quart, and I'll soak them for at least 12 hours, but preferably 24 hours. The next day, you can see that these are plumped up and they're looking a little bit softer, but crucially, they're still dry enough to grind down into a coarse mix that's gonna bind together and hold its shape when deep fried. By the way, if you're a scrub and forgot to soak your beans, you can still play along. Here's the speedrun version. Start by adding 225 grams of dried chickpeas into boiling water with 10 grams of baking soda. Then kill the heat, slap on a lid, and toss the pot into a 180 oven for 90 minutes. In my experience, these beans work pretty well and make falafel that's almost as good as the main character beans. The only downside is that you don't have perfect moisture control with this process, and sometimes the chickpeas end up a little bit too soft. If this happens, you can always add a couple of tablespoons of chickpea flour to the falafel mix. Next, I'm going to pour these soaked chickpeas into a colander and then let them drain for 1 to 2 minutes. Once drained, I'll move these beans over to a food processor, then pulse them about 25 to 30 times. It's really hard to give you an exact number here because every food chopper is different, but I'm gonna show you the exact texture that we're looking for and you can eyeball your way there. After about 12 pulses or so, I'll come back and scrape down the sides to avoid having marble-sized beans in my falafel. Next, I'll keep pulsing until these chickpeas are chopped into a texture that closely resembles chopped garlic. This is the crux of this entire recipe. If you get the chickpea size correct, you are most likely gonna have tender, moist falafel with a crispy exterior. The flavor part comes in a second, but by far the biggest predictor of textural success is particle size. If you over chop these beans, you're gonna end up with 2 problems. Number 1, the texture is gonna be pasty and the interior is gonna be simultaneously dry and mushy. And number 2, you lose most of the crispiness because things are so smooth and homogeneous. On the other hand, the falafel balls made with the chopped garlic-sized beans have a lot of these little craggy bits on the outside that crisp up super nicely. If you under chop your beans like this, well, sometimes you can actually get away with it, but most of the time, overly coarse falafel mix just falls apart in the fryer. Just for good measure, here's one more shot of what properly chopped garbanzos look like. If you get your beans close to this, you've got a good opportunity to make S-tier falafel. Next, I'll move these chopped beans over to a mixing bowl, then I'll spin up the flavorful part. For that, into the same jar, I'll add 100 grams of red onion, 10 grams of garlic, and 25 grams of jalapeno. By the way, I chopped these down first so that they spin up a little bit easier. Then 12 grams of salt, 5 grams cumin, 2 grams coriander, 2 grams turmeric, 25 grams of parsley, stems removed, and 25 grams of cilantro, stems okay. From here, I'll just spin the food chopper for about a minute or so, or until the aromatics are well broken down. Unlike the beans, you can get away with a variety of different textures here, but I prefer a smooth herb paste because I think that makes the greenest, prettiest falafel. Now the herb paste goes into the bowl with the chopped garbanzos, and then I'll just stir until everything is combined. A quick litmus test that I like to do once mixed to determine if the mixture has enough moisture to stay together is squeeze it tightly in my hand. It should come together and stay together. If yours is too crumbly at this point, throw the whole thing back into the food chopper and spin it for another 10 to 15 seconds until it can hold its shape. From here, I'm gonna move this falafel mix over to the fridge to sit for 30 minutes. This helps the falafel mix stay together later on even better because it soaks up some of the excess juice from the fresh herbs and aromatics. 30 minutes later, I'm gonna snag this mix out of the fridge and ball it up. At this point, I know the beans have absorbed the perfect amount of liquid when it no longer looks wet in the bowl, but when I give it a firm squeeze, a lot of herby juice comes out. This means that all the flavorful juices are inside of the beans and not sitting on the outside. Next, I'll divide this mix into 15 to 17 balls that are roughly 40 grams each. Or you can eyeball it if you're not a nerd like me. Now to turn this mix into balls, I'm just gonna flip it into my palms and pass it back and forth while giving it a gentle but firm squeeze to compact it, and then I'll round it off. Once these little rascals are rolled up, it's time to fry them. But first, I'm gonna thank Seed for sponsoring this vid and keeping my gastrointestinal system humming throughout this entire bean-heavy process. When you cook food professionally, whether it's in in a restaurant or here on FoodTube, the thing that people don't talk a lot about is that you end up eating all of the delicious food that you're cooking, and over time, you kind of develop a acrimonious relationship with your gastrointestinal tract. That gut distress is what led me to taking Seed's DSO1 well before they started sponsoring the channel, and I've stuck with it over the years because I found that it really makes a difference. Look, I'm not a science guy, like I do recipes in grams, but that doesn't really mean that I'm smart. But the science stuff that I have learned from Seed has been pretty compelling. According to Seed, a lot of probiotics don't even survive in your stomach acid. Seed's DSO1, on the other hand, is built with a capsule-in-capsule design that is capable of delivering 24 clinically studied strains, plus a prebiotic safely down to your colon. DSO1 is formulated to reduce bloating and make poops easier in about 2 weeks. My bathroom trips went from being D or even F tier to A or S if I'm lucky. Oh, gross, this is a food video. Don't act like you don't do poop too. So if you guys want to give DSO1 a shot, right now, Seed is going to give you guys 25% off your first month of DSO1 with my code Brian25. If you want to try it, I'll leave a link down in the description. To set up my fry pot, I'm gonna grab a large heavy bottom pot and drop it over medium heat. Then I'll add in about a quart or 2 inches worth of high smoke point oil. I like peanut, but whatever oil you use, never fill your frying vessel higher than halfway up. This is a precautionary measure that leaves plenty of room for hot oil to bubble up, and it should keep it safely contained away from your body. While that heats up, I quickly wanna make a super creamy tahini sauce to serve on top of these balls. First in is gonna be 150 grams of tahini paste. Make sure that it's pourable. If it's overly thick, it's gonna give you a really hard time. Then 20 grams of lemon juice, 3 to 4 grams of salt, and then I'll take 1 little garlic clove and chop it into about 4 pieces so that it's easier to spin down into a sauce. Then I'll drop that in, grab my immersion blender, and spin this until the tahini starts to thicken, which will be almost immediately. Then I'll stream in about 100 to 130 grams of water. And that's it. This is one of my all-time favorite sauces because it's simple, fast, flavorful, and extremely versatile. Aside from falafel or Middle Eastern food, I use it as salad dressing, I put it on roasted vegetables, and I love to eat it with grilled meats like steak. Okay, back at the fry pot, I'll check my oil temperature real quick, and yeah, it's in the ballpark of about 350, which is perfect. Next, I'm gonna carefully drop in my falafel balls away from my body with a slotted spoon, one at a time. I'm being really careful and deliberate when I do this because deep frying is not zero risk, and these balls are pretty fragile. I'm also making sure to drop them into their own little areas of the oil, and I'm frying in 2 8-piece batches so that the balls don't touch. All of this should ensure that the balls stay intact and fry up really cleanly. And after 2 minutes of not touching, they've developed enough of a crust for me to come back and agitate them a little bit. This keeps them from being stuck to the bottom of the pot or to each other, and it keeps the parts of the ball that are facing down from getting too dark. From here, I'm gonna fry this for another 3-ish minutes, which makes the whole fry time about 6 to 7 in total. Then when they're looking nice and crusty, I'm gonna move them over to a wire rack so that they can cool without steaming, and it also helps drain off any excessive oil. The final color here should be darker than you think, like almost a reddish golden brown. And there should be no visible green on the outside. That's a sign that your balls are gonna be a little bit undercooked in the middle. Now to finish this process, I'm gonna go back to the oil and carefully drop in the other half of my balls and fry them for about 6 to 7 more minutes. And once they're deeply crisped up and dark golden brown, I'm gonna move these over to a wire rack. To serve, I'm gonna pile up and hit with a generous squeezer of my creamy tahini sauce. And that, my friends, is the best falafel that I've ever made, and probably the best that I've ever had. My gosh. There's this perfect crunchy shell around the outside that is shatteringly crisp. It's so interesting. Every once in a while, you get these little tastes of caramelized onion and roasted garlic from the bits that got deep fried on the outside. And then of course, throughout the entire experience, you're getting this fresh, juicy herbage kind of punching you right in the face. It's divine. If you want to check out a video where I show you my well-tested recipes for pita and hummus, I'll link to that video right here. See you there.